People think pirates feared only the gallows, the navy, or the storms. But there are stories sailors never tell on crowded docks. Stories that live only in whispered voices, passed from ship to ship, in the darkest hours of the night. Tonight, you'll hear 7 of them. 7 forgotten horror stories from the age of pirates.
They told him mermaids were beautiful. Captain Elias Crow had heard every story about pale women in the waves singing men to sleep. Soft arms, soft voices. They never mentioned the teeth. His crew found Black Tide Cove by accident. A storm ripped their sails apart and shoved their ship toward a jagged horseshoe of rock. By some miracle, they didn't crash. The sea went suddenly calm. Too calm. No wind, no waves, just still, glassy black water.
"Captain,"
his first mate whispered, staring over the rail.
"The tide, it ain't moving."
It was true. The ship sat in water that looked frozen in place. That was the first sign. The second sign came at night. Elias was on deck alone when he heard it. Singing. Not from the horizon, not from another ship, from under the hull. Soft, slow, beautiful voices, humming a melody that sounded like home. Like every safe port he had ever known. Like childhood. He leaned over the railing. In the still black water, he saw them. At first, they looked like women with long hair drifting around them. Pale faces, dark eyes, hands reaching up as if asking to be saved.
"Please, help us."
The voice was inside his skull, not his ears. He nearly called the crew, but something stopped him. A pressure in his head, like fingers pressing on his thoughts.
"Jump,"
the voice whispered.
"You're so tired. Let the sea hold you."
He blinked and stepped back. The next day, 3 men were missing. No splashes in the night, no screams. Their hammocks, empty. Boots still on the floor, knives left behind. Just gone. That night, Elias forbade anyone from going on deck alone. It didn't matter. The singing got louder. It climbed up through the wood of the ship, through the planks, through the men's bones. They started having the same dream. They floated in the water on their backs, face to the sky, while cold hands stroked their hair and something sharp pressed, very gently, at their throats. One man woke up smiling, walked calmly to the railing, and stepped off. Elias heard the splash, but by the time he reached the rail, the sea was still, calm, black. He saw them again, the women, this time closer. Their hair wasn't hair at all. It was long strands of rotting seaweed clinging to pale skulls. Their eyes were not eyes, just black holes full of tiny, writhing shapes. And when they smiled, he saw rows and rows of needle teeth stretching all the way back into a throat that never ended. Something moved beneath them, shapes coiling and uncoiling. They weren't on the water. They were part of something much, much bigger. A mass beneath the ship, a carpet of bodies fused together, drifting, singing, feeding. Black Tide Cove was not a place. It was a mouth. Elias did the only thing he could. He ordered the remaining men to plug their ears with wax, lash themselves to the masts, and ignore any voice they heard, even if it sounded like their mother, their lover, their own child. 3 nights of singing, 3 nights of pressure, 3 nights of tears. On the 4th morning, the water finally moved. The tide rolled out. The ship drifted free. They never found the cove again on any map. Elias never returned to land. He sailed the rest of his life in open water, never anchoring near rocks, never staying in one place too long, never trusting calm seas. Because somewhere out there, there's a part of the ocean that's not really water. It's hungry, and it sings.
The storm came in without warning. Captain Marlowe's crew saw the lightning first, then heard the wind screaming like a living thing. They fought the waves for hours. Then, through the rain, they saw another ship, a dark silhouette to starboard, riding the storm like it belonged there. "What colors?" Marlowe shouted. "None," his lookout yelled back. "No flag, no lanterns, nothing." Yet the ship was moving smoothly, directly toward them. A bell rang, not on Marlowe's ship, on the other. 3 slow, heavy chimes. Marlowe grabbed the speaking trumpet and shouted, "Ship ahoy! Identify yourself!" No answer. The other vessel drew closer. Its hull was black, soaked, glistening. Its sails were torn yet somehow full. And along its side, written in flaking white letters, was a name: Salvation. A crewman beside Marlowe went pale. "Captain, that's impossible." "Why?" "Because my father served on a ship called Salvation. She went down 40 years ago. No survivors, no wreckage." Lightning cracked across the sky. For one split second, the 2 ships were lit up in searing white, and Marlowe saw the crew of the Salvation, or what was left of them. They stood motionless on deck, skin gray and bloated, rotted in patches, eyes sunk deep into black pits, seaweed grown from their mouths, trailing down their chests. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was that in every face, behind the rot and the ruin, Marlowe recognized the same expression: relief, as if they had finally found someone to replace them. The ships collided. No sound of wood breaking, no crunch, no splinters. They passed through each other, and for a heartbeat, Marlowe's entire crew felt something cold slide inside their bones, like hands reaching from afar, groping for purchase. The storm vanished. The sea went flat. The ghost ship was gone. For a while, everything seemed normal, until they heard the bell. 3 slow chimes from their own masthead. The lookout swore he hadn't touched it. That night, the first man vanished, left his clothes, his boots, his knife, gone. The second night, another. The third, 2 more. They searched the ship from prow to stern. They tied men to their cots. They kept watch in pairs. It didn't matter. By dawn of the 4th day, half the crew was missing. Marlowe finally understood. When the Salvation sank, it called out to anything listening. Something answered. It offered a deal. "We'll keep you sailing if you bring us replacements." Every few years, the ghost ship found another vessel in a storm, passed through it, took what it needed. Now Marlowe's ship was marked. That night he heard voices in the hull, men whispering in languages he didn't know, hands thumping from inside the wood. He knew then.
His ship had started answering its own distress call. And somewhere out there, in a storm he hadn't met yet, another captain would look up and see his ship in the lightning.
They told the story of Captain Briggs's treasure on every dock. Gold buried on an uncharted island. Cursed, of course. Every pirate rumor ends with a curse. But that never stopped anyone. The crew of the Harpy's Wish found the island by following a map tattooed into a dead man's back. They dug where the X should have been. Found nothing. Dug deeper. The shovel hit something wooden. A chest. Blackened, rotted at the corners, wrapped in chains. A heavy iron lock grinned from the front. They hauled it onto the ship. The captain ordered it opened. The lock snapped easily. The chains slid away. Inside was no gold, just teeth. Dozens, maybe hundreds of human teeth at the bottom. Above them, a layer of rings, coins, and trinkets, all crusted with old blood. The crew fell silent. Then one man laughed nervously. Must be Briggs's sense of humor. They dumped the teeth overboard, kept the gold, nailed the chest shut, and went to bed. At sunrise, the teeth were back in the chest. Every single one. At first, the captain thought it was a joke. He shouted, threatened, nearly shot a man. No one confessed. They tossed the chest overboard entirely. It sank without a splash. That night, it was back on deck, wet, dripping. And this time, it wasn't empty. Inside, on top of the teeth, was a tongue. Fresh, still bleeding. Watching the crew stare at the chest, the captain made his second mistake. The first mistake was touching it. The second was deciding to keep it. He told himself it was fear making him see things, that the teeth seemed wider every day, that the little pile grew taller. Then fingers appeared. Those who stole from the chest started losing pieces of themselves. A man who pocketed a coin woke up without 2 fingers. Another kept a ring and lost his eye. The cook stole a gold earring and was found dead the next morning with his ear missing, the wound oddly clean. The surgeon knew the signs of a blade. This was not a blade. One night, the captain caught the chest lid moving, just an inch, just enough to see something inside flex. Something pink and wet, curling slowly around the gold. The crew wanted to throw it overboard again. The captain refused. "Treasure's treasure," he said. "We've paid enough already." That was his third mistake. By the time they reached port, there were fewer men. Those who survived watched in horror as the chest, which had once been half empty, now seemed full. Not of gold, of limbs. Fingers, toes, ears, eyes, tongues, pieces of faces, all pressed together, fused into a single writhing mass that clung possessively to every coin. Captain Briggs hadn't buried his treasure. He had fed it. Every theft, every greedy hand, every drop of blood spilled for gold had sunk into the wood and the metal, grown teeth, grown hunger. The surviving crew left the chest on the dock and fled. A week later, another captain found it. He saw only the gold on top. And when people asked him later how his chest got so heavy so fast, he just smiled, with far too many teeth. They thought it was just another nameless island, low, covered in jungle, ringed with white sand and sharp black rock. No smoke,
no signs of life. Perfect place to hide, they said. The crew of the Red Widow anchored in a small cove and rowed ashore. They found no animals, no birds, no insects, just trees, all leaning slightly inward toward the island's center. There they found a pool, perfectly round, perfectly still. The captain dropped a stone into it. No ripples. That was the first wrong thing. Sailors are good at ignoring fear. They decided it was just strange water. They stocked food, repaired sails, slept on the sand. When they woke up, their ship was gone. The cove was empty. Anchor rope severed. No wreckage, no sign of struggle, just calm, flat water. They panicked, blamed each other, searched the island's edge, and found the Red Widow again, on the opposite side of the island. Impossible. They hadn't heard it move. No wind, no waves strong enough. They rowed back out. The captain ordered everyone aboard. They pulled anchor and sailed away, everyone staring back at the shrinking island. By dusk, it was a speck on the horizon. By morning, it was ahead of them. The island. Same shape, same jagged rock, same lean of the trees, waiting. They changed course. By nightfall, it was gone. By the next night, it was behind them, closer. They threw cargo overboard, as if weight was the problem. Men stopped sleeping. They took turns watching the horizon. No matter how far they sailed or in what direction, the island was there, sometimes ahead, sometimes to port, sometimes a shape in the distant fog, but always there. Food rotted faster than it should have. Fresh water turned brackish. Men began to whisper about offers. "The island wants something," one finally said. "They don't follow for no reason." Someone suggested leaving a man behind. Not murder, they said, just a trade. They argued. On the fourth day, their navigator vanished. His boots were still on deck. His hat lay near the rail. The island sat on the horizon, larger now. The jungle inside it seemed to be breathing. That night, they saw fires on the beach, shadows moving between the trees. They weren't alone. The island didn't want a man. It wanted all of them. One by one, more disappeared. Always at night, always silently. Every dawn, the island was closer. On the last morning, the captain stood alone at the wheel. The island loomed just ahead, towering over the bow, its trees now clearly shaped like bent, reaching arms. He closed his eyes. There was no storm, no impact, no final wave, just the sound of roots pushing through wet wood and the faint, satisfied sigh of soil swallowing something new. Years later, other sailors swore they'd found that same island. Sometimes it's in the north, sometimes in the tropics, sometimes in waters no map can explain. But always, if you stay too long in one place at sea, you feel like something is staring at you from the horizon, waiting for you to get tired of running. They hanged Captain Rourke at dawn. 7 counts of mutiny, 12 of murder, countless raids. He laughed while the priest read his last rites, laughed while the rope was put around his neck, laughed as the plank slid away beneath his boots. His neck broke, his body swung. The crowd cheered. They left him hanging for 3 tides. When they took his corpse down and put it in a pine box, no one noticed his fingers twitch. The box was nailed shut, loaded with rocks, and thrown overboard beyond the harbor. He sank. Silence. Darkness. Then the wood began to groan. At the bottom of the sea, something slid past Rourke's coffin. A shape larger than any ship. An eye half the size of a man's chest opened in the gloom. It looked at the captain, at the rope still around his neck, at the broken vertebrae, at the grin frozen on his dead lips. It understood something. This man did not fear death. It was impressed. When the coffin washed back ashore 3 nights later, the men who pried it open expected rot. Rourke sat up, coughed up seawater, smiled. "Miss me, lads?" He shouldn't have been able to breathe. His neck was still broken at a crooked angle. His eyes were filmed white. And yet, he walked. He returned to sea with a new crew. No one dared question the impossible. But they noticed something. He never slept, never ate much, never bled when cut. Bullets went in, came out. He shrugged. Storms parted around his ship. Enemy fire hit their sails, their deck, their men, but never him. Whispers spread. He had made a deal under the sea. The ocean would not take him, at a cost. Years passed. His hair never went gray. His face never wrinkled. The only thing that changed was the sound. At night, when the crew tried to sleep, they heard a bell, faint, coming from underwater. Even in calm seas, even in port. 3 soft chimes. Rourke's smile would widen just a little when he heard it. One mutinous sailor tried to stab him in his cot. The knife went in, all the way to the hilt. Rourke looked down at it, then at the man. "You can't drown what already belongs to the deep," he said. The man vanished the next morning, his bunk empty, his hammock swaying. No one mentioned the new shadow in the water alongside the hull. On the day Rourke finally tried to retire, he stepped onto a quiet dock, boots touching solid land for the first time in decades. The bell rang, louder than ever, from nowhere, from everywhere. The tide surged. Hands made of water grabbed his ankles, his knees, his waist. He reached for his pistol, but his bones wouldn't move right. His muscles had forgotten how to fight anything that wasn't the sea. They dragged him back into the water. Witnesses swore. He didn't scream. He laughed. Then the waves closed over him, and the bell went silent. Sailors still say that if you sail too long without touching land, if you start to think you're beyond death, you'll hear Rourke's bell, not as a warning, as a welcome.
The Black Reef Light had been abandoned for years. No keeper, no maintenance, no reason for it to still work. Yet ships passing in the night swore they saw it, a pale, sickly beam sweeping the sea, in places no map showed a lighthouse. 2 pirates,
Mara and Lyle decided to use it. "An unmarked light is a perfect trap," Mara grinned. "We'll anchor nearby and watch. Any ship that steers toward it is practically begging to wreck." They found the reef at dusk. The lighthouse tower was cracked, half collapsed, covered in barnacles and black moss. Its lantern room at the top glowed faintly, though no flame was visible. They anchored on the far side, where the light didn't touch them, and waited. Fog rolled in. The beam swept back and forth, slow and heavy, like an eye fighting sleep. Then they saw it. A merchant vessel, sails fat with wind, changing course, heading straight for the false light. The crew cheered quietly until they saw the rocks, black teeth just beneath the surface. The merchant ship never hit them. It passed right through. For a moment, the world glitched. The ship flickered like a candle flame. Its colors went wrong. Then it vanished. No wreckage, no screams, no splintered wood. Just the lighthouse beam passing over empty water. That night, Mara dreamed she was in the lantern room. The glass was cracked, the lens was shattered, and inside, instead of a flame, was a face. Burned into the air, mouth open, eyes melted, trapped mid-scream. Its teeth were glowing. Every time the beam swept across the sea, the face slowly turned, as if searching. She woke with salt in her mouth. The next day, Lyle insisted they explore the lighthouse. Inside, the stairs were wrong. They spiraled in a direction her eyes didn't like, too steep, too narrow. Halfway up, the walls began to sweat seawater. Whispers slid between the stones. "You came for wreckage," a voice said. "Good. Wreckage came for you too." At the top, the lantern room was empty. No lamp, no mechanism. Just a single human spine standing upright in the center of the room, vertebrae fused together, each bone etched with the name of a ship. When the beam passed over them, the names glowed. Some ships Mara knew, some hadn't been built yet. Lyle stepped closer, reached out. The light hit his hand. For a heartbeat, he vanished. Mara saw straight through him, out to the sea beyond. When the light moved, he was solid again. He looked at her with eyes that weren't entirely his. "The light doesn't guide ships," he whispered. "It calls them. It catalogs them." A wave slammed against the rock below, hard enough to shake the tower. Mara ran. Back on the ship, she cut the anchor herself. The crew shouted. She didn't explain. When she looked back, the lighthouse was gone. No tower, no reef, just open sea. That night, a beam of sickly light swept across their deck. No source, no lantern, just a line of pale illumination passing slowly over the wood, over the ropes, over her boots, pausing for a moment on the carved name of her ship. The letters glowed. She didn't sleep after that, because she understood. The lighthouse didn't mark rocks. It marked ownership, and her ship had just been added to the list. They buried Silas Kane on an island no one had ever charted. He chose it himself. "I don't want any man finding what I've taken," he said, tossing a heavy chest onto the sand, "or where I'm going." He made his men dig his grave while he watched, sitting on the chest like a throne. Then he loaded a pistol, pointed it at the sky, and said, "When the time comes, I'll put myself in the ground. You'll cover me. Then you'll sail. No songs, no prayers, no coming back." When he finally grew old and sick, they returned. He kept his word, walked into the half-dug grave, lay down, placed the pistol on his chest. His crew covered him without looking. By the time they set sail, the island was already fading into fog. Silas expected darkness. He got echoes. Every word he'd ever shouted, every laugh, every threat, every scream he'd ignored. They bounced around him in the dirt, growing louder, denser, until he wanted to claw his own ears off. He tried to raise his hands. He couldn't. He tried to scream. He couldn't. Because he wasn't bones yet. He was still alive. He realized, too late, that the island had no animals because it did not tolerate competing predators. It wanted him. Not dead, kept. His chest didn't rise. His heart didn't beat. But he felt everything. Years passed. He felt his skin rot, felt insects move through his ribs, felt tree roots splitting his coffin. He also felt something else. Other graves. He wasn't the first to choose this island. He wouldn't be the last. One night, or what felt like night, he felt a new weight on top of him. Another coffin, another fool. Voices above, muffled, laughing. "We'll never speak of this place again." He tried to shout, to warn them. All that came out was a puff of air in a chest with no lungs. But the island heard him. It liked his effort. It let him whisper. The next time sailors camped on the shore, they heard something beneath their feet. Not waves, not crabs. Words. "Turn back. Leave the chest. Don't dig." They called it superstition, drank, slept. One by one, they sank into the sand without waking, pulled down by roots shaped like fingers, dragged toward a man whose body no longer moved, but whose mind refused to stop. Silas had wanted to keep his treasure. He got his wish. He kept every soul that ever set foot on that island. Centuries later, a storm-wrecked ship washed ashore there. A young pirate captain staggered up the beach, alone, coughing, desperate. He found bones, rust, old graves. He dug. The first voice he heard in the hole wasn't his own. It was Silas. "Welcome." The captain froze. In his lantern light, he saw a skull beneath him. The jaw moved. No lungs, no throat. "Bury yourself," the skull whispered, "or the island will do it for you." The captain ran. He didn't make it far. The sand moved like water under his feet, hands pulling him down. The last thing he heard before the earth closed over his face was Silas Kane laughing. Because what's a pirate without something to bury?